Welcome to Universal Talk. On today's show, we ponder exopolitics, energy medicine, and the positive future. Let's present the case. First, we must consider the possibility that we might not be alone in this universe. One of the Pope's astronomers just recently made a statement: any entity, no matter how many tentacles it has a soul. When he was asked, would he baptize an alien, he replied, only if they asked. And that's from The Guardian. The next thought to ponder is, what is energy medicine? And finally, what is all this talk about the 2012 phenomenon and a positive timeline? Well, what if ETs did exist? What if they looked so much like us that they actually walked amongst us? How many species could there possibly be? What if energy medicine could be actually used today to heal others? Is this how Jesus healed people? Is this how current priests and other healers even today heal individuals through what they call the laying on of hands? And what if there was truly a 2012 scenario to occur? How would we prepare for such an event? Many prophecies that have been documented, including the Holy Bible, speak of an end-time scenario. Is it possible that this could be that time? In a moment, we will have Dr. Alfred Webre on the show. For those of you who may not know Alfred yet, he is the chairman of the Board of Advisors of Mars, the leading exopolitical theorist and activist. He is considered to be the founding father of the field of exopolitics as a social science discipline. Through working at the Stanford Research Institute, he directed a proposed ET communication study project for the Carter White House in 1977, which evolved into his book, Exopolitics: Politics, Government, and the Law in the Universe. His extensive bio is available on his website at www.exopolitics.com. He also authors a column for the PhiladelphiaExaminer.com. Dr. Alfred Webre, welcome to Universal Talk.
Joe, you know, I'm very, very happy to be with you here and to join you. I'm actually speaking with you cross-continent from Vancouver, Canada.
That's awesome. So can you tell the listeners and the viewers here who may not know about you a little about your history that brings you to this place right now?
Well, I was actually the general counsel of the Environmental Protection Administration of New York City toward the end of 1972, when I saw and began to read in books having to do with parapsychology, things like Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain. And I saw that there was something beyond what the Newtonian physics view of the world really had to offer, and what my education, even though I'd had the best of educations in the best of schools, had given me up to that point. So I sought out experts, in particular a professor at Rutgers University, who was an expert in parapsychology and also in extraterrestrial studies. And by the middle of 1973, I had already published my own book, which was published by G.B. Putnam's, and it was published in the U.S. and in Canada. It was also translated into Japanese and published in Japan, and that set out some basic theories about extraterrestrial communication. One of the primary theories was that, yes, we live in a populated universe, and what we knew as the UFO phenomenon could actually be seen in terms of psychology as peripheral cueing, and that is when coming in with a stimulus at the periphery of human vision sort of over the course of 2 or 3 decades bringing the human race up to an awareness that we are not alone in the universe. So in that sense, the UFO phenomenon was like a psychological conditioner which brought us up to the present state where we are now, where if you look at the public opinion polls, a very rigorous one was the 2002 Roper poll, which found that 48% of adult Americans believe that extraterrestrials are visiting Earth now, and 75% of adult Americans believe that the government is covering up their presence.
Okay. So you mentioned your extensive education. So can you tell the viewers, like, what is your background and what you currently do today?
Well, I come out of sort of the classical tradition. I went to Georgetown Preparatory School and got the gold medal in Greek. And then I went to Yale Law School and was an honors graduate with a Bachelor of Science. And then I went to Yale Law School, where I was a Yale Law School National Scholar in International Law. And then I was a Fulbright Scholar in Montevideo, Uruguay, in international law. And I practiced with a very large international law firm, the largest international law firm in the world. And then I went into, I became more interested in the environment, and I became general counsel of the Environmental Protection Administration of New York City. And from there, I've sort of branched out into a career as an environmentalist, as a futurist. I was, as a futurist at Stanford Research Institute, I directed a proposed 1977 extraterrestrial communication study with the White House of Jimmy Carter on the campaign trail in 1976 against Gerald Ford. Jimmy Carter had promised to open up all the UFO and extraterrestrial files, which were then secret. So I took him at his word, approached the White House, got their approval, and started putting together the first civilian scientific UFO study on record. That was unfortunately stopped by the Pentagon in the fall, in October of 1977, who threatened SRI, threatened Stanford Research Institute, that they would, quote, stop all of their contracts with SRI, which then amounted to about 25% of Stanford Research Institute's budget, or out of a $100 million budget. So my project got stopped.
Wow.
But I've since continued, and out of that experience, I developed the field of exopolitics, which is a new science, and it's the science of the study of relations among intelligent civilizations in the universe. And my book, Exopolitics, Politics, Government, and the Law in the Universe, which you can get on Amazon or at exopolitics.com, is now in its second decade. It's a worldwide book. I'm about to go down to South America. I'm lecturing at the University of Colima in Mexico at the Faculty of Science before 1,000 students on this subject, and down in Argentina at the International Ufological Conference, which is now entitled Journey Toward Exopolitics. Exopolitics was also nominated to be Word of the Year in 2005. So we're making broad inroads into the culture, and in this period of transition, as we move from a planet-centered society to a more galactic and universe-centered society.
Right. So do you find that different populations in different parts of the world are more accepting of this information?
I would say so. There are a lot of paradoxes here. Paradoxically, in the U.S., which is probably one of the societies in which the information is most censored, you have a very high acceptance among the population. And I just mentioned some of those figures. 48% of the adult population of the U.S. believe that extraterrestrials are visiting the Earth now. And that's because of the very active outreach that the extraterrestrials themselves have undertaken since the mid-1950s, despite the extraterrestrial embargo, which the U.S. government put into place in 1953. What happened is that in July of 52, there's a big flap and UFO flap, and UFOs flew right behind the U.S. Capitol in July 16th and throughout July of 1952. And then President Truman sent F-86 Sabre jets after them, and it was on the front page of the newspapers, and all kinds of stuff, kind of wars of the world. And there was no evidence that these objects were hostile. Rather, it was the U.S. which was hostile, which went into a fear reaction. So in 1953, the CIA convened a panel called the Robertson Panel, and that determined and set out a rule that from then on, any mention of UFOs or of extraterrestrials in the United States, in either the media, in academia, in education, in government, or elsewhere, had to be accompanied by ridicule, or else the person doing it would lose their career, be subject to ridicule, or in some cases murdered. And that was, in effect, putting a huge damper on the study of extraterrestrials and UFOs in the U.S. But despite that, the extraterrestrials have continued a very, very sophisticated and powerful outreach in terms of UFO sightings, so that Americans are, by and large, well educated about the extraterrestrial presence from the UFOs themselves. And in other parts of the world, for example, South America, there isn't the same sort of government crackdown or censorship on the UFO and extraterrestrial issue, so that one can speak openly about extraterrestrials and what are the extraterrestrials doing, and what are the Greys doing, and what are the Balans doing, and what are the Nordics doing, and what are the Orion people doing, and what are the Pleiadians doing, and what are the other people doing, and you can have a decent conversation, whereas in the U.S., most of the conversation tends to be relatively shallow, and people who are really into it are into it in an in-depth way. And then you have a large part of the population still hypnotized by the official government propaganda, and they go into the giggle factor. So it's a real changing kind of theme. Now we seem to be coming into much more of an official disclosure